Hey guys, how's it going? It's your boy MKS here. Welcome to part three, the third and penultimate part of, I suppose, my dreams to unite Italians together, not just in Italy but all around the world through football, soccer, Calcio, FOOTie, or whatever you want to call it. Um, so, as I mentioned before, I'd love to go to Italy and share my ideas with coaching academies, with the FIGC, the Italian FA. And other and Scuola Calcio, Italian football schools, and the academies and different football teams and things like that. And I'd love to go with my fellow Anglo-Indians and other Eurasians and neurodivergent people to share our ideas and what we can do to benefit Italian football and like practice with Italians, and also bring together Italians and Celts or Celtic fans and that kind of thing. So I think that covers everything for the intro. These are ideas, pointers, thoughts, or whatever you want to call them, number 21 to 30. So I hope you enjoy it, and I hope Italian football fans all around the world will check out these videos. It's slightly later than planned. It's now midnight here in the UK, so I guess it's technically a new day. But anyway, I'm hoping as much of the rest of March as possible. I almost did well enough to keep the intro down to a minute, but as much of the rest of March as possible, I hope to focus on ideas for Italian football and things like that, and probably a few other things as well. But anyway, here goes. So number 21, I would love to connect together the diaspora, as I mentioned. I struggled to pronounce that one properly. Pronunciate. The diaspora or diaspora, however you pronounce it. I'm sure you know what I mean. But Italians from all around the world, those of Italian descent, basically, and that kind of thing. And so, as I say, not just in Italy itself, not only in Italy itself, but also all around the world. So Italians or those of Italian descent who live in England, Germany, Spain, France, Portugal, America, Canada, and all over the world. They often in Canada and America, they often do celebrate when Italy wins as well. But I'd love to see how they can benefit Italian football, whether that's like through funding Italian teams, helping to sponsor Italian teams. I know AC Milan, for instance, is owned by a guy of Italian descent. Another thing is, but I hope more of those of Italian descent, like business people and whatnot, and just general people, especially those who can have money to donate to or invest in, preferably both, Italian football, will do so. And I would love for Italy to also be able to somehow get people of from Brazil, Argentina, possibly even Canada, America, and all around the world of Italian descent to play for Italy. So they get as many of those as possible. I think that'd be pretty cool. Anyone basically who can qualify for Italy, I hope they'll pick the best possible players. So there's no room for nepotism. I also forgot to mention, actually, as I say, 21 again, that in parts 1 and 2, I forgot to mention something which has now gone out of my mind again. So annoying to forget things, but there's a point I was going to mention. Oh yeah, a few days ago, I discussed my dreams. I think that was a couple of days ago, 2 days ago or whatever. I discussed my goals for Italian football club teams, and this one is more for the national team or football generally. Number 22. On that note, I would love for Italian those involved in Italian football, and basically Italians, as I say, to connect together. So like politicians, councillors, parents, teachers, and the wider society. Once again, as I often repeat myself, that is an idea I discussed before, but I was thinking like maybe this is naive of me, but even like the police, like for instance, let's say if the police have some time to play football with younger people, then that could mean they'll form a positive relationship with young people, in the sense that young people might be less inclined, hopefully, to get involved in crime if they make friends with the police, obviously in an appropriate way, of course. But if they sort of become friendlier with the police, they'll have a better sort of respect for the police, perhaps not through like violence or force or anything, but because they play football with them and become friends with them, and they give them opportunities. So I'd love for the Italian youth to have as much opportunities to play football as possible, as I talked before about spaces and places for sport and that kind of thing, in this case football. And I hope, again, I know I discussed how the Italian football could work with FIFA, UEFA, the FIGC and Serie A and all those involved in Italian football, including the lower leagues, academies, I'd say politicians, councillors, youth centres and all sorts of groups all sorts of people from Italy and of Italian descent, and my fellow Anglo-Indians and Eurasians and generally, and neurodiverse people could perhaps work together, share ideas on how to get more young people into football and how football can be used as a positive force for good to build bridges, build connections, cut crimes, get rid of corruption and things like that. So, and that kind of thing. So using football for a positive thing, and hopefully instead of hooliganism, for instance, I forgot to mention. Well, I sort of briefly touched on in point number 11 that I would love for Italians to be, instead of what I'd love to change about Italian football. So I'd love for Italians to avoid hooliganism or violence unless it's self-defence, and instead sort of be proud of their teams doing well on the pitch and winning trophies. And I think being involved in hooliganism or things like that could instead jeopardise Italian football teams, because it could give them fines or even punishments like bans. Obviously a fine is a punishment as well, but even bans or things like points deductions, or I'd say even bans and losing competitions and things like Roma could have potentially been kicked out of European competition. In fact, they could still, heaven forbid, be kicked out of such. So it'd be good, I think, instead of like the ultras or football hooligans, which are often called the ultras in Italy, were involved in supporting their football teams financially and that kind of thing, and learning about coaching and helping them in that way as well. But I hope they can see what new things they can do. If I'm really dreaming, I'd love for, let's say, Italians to avoid crime, and maybe even this is a controversial one, should be careful what I say, but not be involved in the mafia or anything like that, but instead be involved in football. That's probably one of my mad pipe dreams. But anyway, moving on, number 23, I'd love to look into ways Italian football could raise funds through investments, sponsorship deals, and all sorts. Sorry, my cats are messing about. All sorts of sponsorship deals and things like that. Just in case you wondered why the screen was moving a bit, it's because my cats are messing about with the laptop. And also perhaps what Italian football can do for football for good and helping developing nations, and including migrants and other groups and bringing them together as well. Number 24, on that note, as I say, including migrants and everyone, as I say, politicians, councils, teachers, parents, and everyone else, sort of across Italy, even the police, council workers, charities, NGOs, youth centres, and whoever else possible, even businesses to invest in and donate to their local teams and things like that. Again, learn from other countries, as I mentioned before, but bringing all possible people from across Italy together. And I hope they'll pick the best possible players. Again, no room for nepotism. I hope they'll bring in the best possible players, and maybe utilising the migrants and improving relations with migrants. Maybe Italy could have the next Kante or Mbappe, or players like that, basically Zidane, and players like that from across Africa and Asia and around the world who come to Italy. And another thing is, another idea I forgot to mention earlier, is I would love for Italy to have a skills program, but for football, which I think would be quite interesting. Again, another one of my quirky ideas, out of the box, out there sort of ideas. But whereas Australia has a point system for migration, so they say they only want skilled migration, and Nigel Farage, who I'm not sure if he still is, but was the leader of UKIP, who talked about Brexit and all that. Sorry for those from overseas who might not know much about that, but he talked about copying Australia and having a point sort of based system. But in Italy's case, I would love it if they gave opportunities for those with a skill or talent which could benefit Italian football, whether that's playing football or helping to build stadiums, that kind of thing, pitches, stadiums/stadia, whichever word you prefer to use, academies and that sort of thing. So building those sorts of infrastructures and opportunities. I suppose one disadvantage of migration could be that if there's so many people, how much space they could build to give opportunities. another thing is, as I talked about the diaspora, we called if Italians could go overseas to train and practice with different nations and improve relations. An idea I almost forgot, through diplomacy, improve relations with all possible nations, especially, as I mentioned before, like Mediterranean, Middle Eastern, and transcontinental, especially Eurasian nations, going to those nations and practicing and looking at what they have in common with Spain, France, Portugal, and other Mediterranean nations, and Latin nations especially. And also, I almost forgot another thing as I was waffling away. I would love to promote Italian football all around the world, including across Africa and Asia and Latin America, and basically everywhere all around the world, to promote Serie A and Italian football generally, especially Serie A and Serie A teams all around the world. Like, I'd love to see more fans across Africa, Asia, and those sorts of places, especially as they have huge populations. But the other thing is, improving the global image of Italian football, improving and things like that. I think maybe tackling racism, prejudice generally, football hooliganism, criminality, corruption, and things like that, match fixing, tackling those sorts of things, I think could improve the image of Italian football globally. Again, it's another thing that perhaps they could learn from the EPL, the English Premier League, who do that really well, and what the EPL does well, and probably even what they don't do so well. So there's mistakes you can avoid, similar with Spain and all that kind of thing, La Liga and Ligue 1 in France, and so on and so forth. And some of the projects I wish to do when I wish to travel to parts of Asia and Africa to help my fellow neurodiverse people in those nations, and in doing so, I hope also to promote Italian football and Celtic while I'm there. Moving on, number 25, I would love to see Italy host events for like republics. They could host the Mediterranean Cup, the Tricolor Cup. Sorry, I like to put it in this order: the Mediterranean Cup, tournaments, tourneys, leagues, and whatnot, and also the Republics Cup, again, tourneys, as I sometimes call them, leagues and things like that, and also the Tricolor, similar for the Tricolor sort of thing, cups, leagues, tournaments, and whatnot. And forming positive relations, as I say, with as many parts of the world as possible, and that kind of thing. Number 26, I'd love to see Italy giving back, fundraising for countries that were part of the empire, which they colonized, the Roman Empire, helping to build football pitches in those countries, but also and building academies. So it could be a mutual benefit as well, but also like helping with, say, Ethiopia, which is going through a lot of problems at the moment, and also Tunisia and Eritrea and other places which were part of the Roman Empire. Although they would have an unfair sort of thing if they built football pitches and academies, an unfair bias, but because I'm biased in favour of Italian football, I would still love to see that. Number 27, I'd love to see Italian football having, and again, I know this is another point I mentioned a while back, but I'd love to see Italian football having the Walk and Hall of Fame, and on websites and YouTube videos and things like that, listing the top and just generally acknowledging the top people who have benefited Italian football through like fundraising for it or through whichever other means they might have benefited Italian football, like helping with coaching or things like that. And as I say, have award ceremonies and just generally giving rewards and acknowledgements and things like that, or including acknowledgements and things like that. Number 28, again, I'd love to see Italian football. I know I've mentioned this before, but Italian football playing more attacking football, more expansive or entertaining football, and looking at what they can learn, like learning about how to exploit other nations' weaknesses in football, and learning all they can about other nations' strategies, like their weaknesses, strengths, and things like that, and trying to find all the possible footballing philosophies and theories and things like that from all around the world. Number 29, I would love for my fellow neurodiverse people and Anglo-Indians and other Eurasians, as I say, to go to Italy, share ideas, as I often say, and even look at how we can donate to and fundraise for Italian football and things like that, and our out-of-the-box ideas, how they could benefit Italian football and that kind of thing. And number 30, this is one I often say, like, I include a dirty idea for my last one, so I did it last time and I forgot I was recording onto Facebook, and maybe this was a blessing in disguise. My other video that I made for Irish empowerment, I don't think uploaded properly on Facebook, but please forgive me for this one. But I hope this doesn't put off potential investors or sponsors. But in my imagination, I imagine like even people from like the adult country, like Only or Lonely Fans, people from OnlyFans, or as we call it, Lonely Fans, or prosies, or porn stars, or people in that sort of industry, strippers or whatever, basically, and that kind of thing, fundraising for Italian football, like giving some of their funds to benefit Italian football. So that's just a little cheeky idea I have at the end. A little idea I have at the end. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video anyway, and sorry if I waffled too much, and I'm out. Peace and love.